Okay, hello everybody. Just checking to make sure that everyone is able to hear me. If you can't hear me, please post a message in the chat. Okay. Okay, great. Getting confirmation that you can hear me. That's wonderful. So thank you everybody for coming so far. We still have quite a few people dropping in on this. I believe we have participants in our event today coming from all over the world based on the email addresses of people who have signed up for this event. And I'm delighted about that. Just to introduce myself to you first, I'm the organizer of this activity. My name is Alex Makosh. I myself have been an educator in Asia for about 13, 14 years, but now am back in British Columbia, Canada. And the purpose in organizing this event today is essentially that looking all around the world, we see more and more school closures happening. We're experiencing this in BC right now with schools closing, and everyone is facing a massive challenge going into the unknown. I know, based off of all my time in education in Asia, that in places like China, Japan, Hong Kong, other countries in Asia that have already been facing this challenge for 2 months, there are outstanding, innovative, creative educators. So I know that people who are like that will have come up with good solutions, good insights, and ways that they can help other educators around the world who are just going into facing this challenge. And that's essentially really what this is about. We're very fortunate that 5 different outstanding educators volunteered to be able to provide this type of insight and experience and share advice based on their 2 months of dealing with this. So that is what we have today. I don't really want to speak any more about myself, but I would like to introduce our speaker. A couple of notes just before I do for our first speaker. Each speaker will share their own insights, so each speaker has their own presentation. Feel free to ask questions in the chat during each talk. And after the talk, everyone who has registered for this event will receive a link to the recording for it and additional resources. So those will be shared, I would think, in the next couple of days. Okay, so without further ado, our first speaker is Michael. So Michael Taylor, he is currently the principal of Kyoto International School in Japan, where they, even though not being mandated by the state, they had gone online early for this. And he has experience, ample experience, not just in Japan, but in Singapore, in Australia as well. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing from Michael. I'm sure he has great information to share with us. I'll pass this over to you now, Michael, and we'll see how this goes. Hopefully it all works well. I'm going to make you the host now.
Oh, how's that? Is that working now? Everyone hear me? We all good?
Great, I can hear you.
You start to sort of, you know, use hand gestures and signals as you do a few more of these things. So anyway, first of all, thank you very much to Alex and the other presenters here this morning or this evening or this afternoon, depending on where you are. This has been an interesting journey and it continues to be an interesting journey. But first of all, I'd like to welcome to a beautiful, beautiful spring day in downtown Kyoto. The sakura is about to start sakuraing. The blossoms are starting to come out, and rightly or wrongly, we're about to come out of distance learning. So what I'm going to share with you today is some of the things that we've gone through and some of the things we're preparing for. So now I'm going to share my screen with you all, and okay, there we go. Just bear with me for a moment. For some reason, this takes longer than what it should. And as much as I am prepared for this, there we go. And hopefully this all comes up. Share screen. All right. We should now all be coming online to my presentation for you all. And I'm hoping everybody can now see that. Correct? Is that coming up? Is that all coming up there, Alex? So the screen sharing is not working so well. That's a bummer. All right. I'm going to walk you through it anyway. We went through pre-distance learning. We started planning for, having seen what was happening in and around Southeast Asia, particularly China and Hong Kong. We tried to get ahead of the wave and start preparing for this about 3 weeks out from actually going to distance learning. And there is an important differentiation. It might be semantical, but I think it's important that you as a school think about this particular point. We at no stage have ever been closed. Our campus has been off limits. Thank you, Alex. Well done. Our campus has been off limits, but distance learning, and we chose this, we went through a couple of iterative naming procedures, but we've arrived on distance learning to reinforce that whilst the campus was closed, learning was going to continue. And even to the point of that I reiterate with the parent body, with the community regularly, that at the end of the distance learning section for this academic year, we will be continuing on. We're not going back over work that we've already done, except to review concepts that maybe weren't clear. But this is a continuation of the learning pathway for this academic year. And I think that that's very important, that schools ensure and reinforce with their, not only their student community, but the parent community, that this is valid learning. This is genuine. It's outcome based. It's assessment verified, and that life is going to move on from this point. So that was one of the things that we moved into, even from our pre-learning. Now, the next slide is, if you could flick it over, please, Mr. Alex. Thank you very much. And this is very much talking to exactly what we're doing here right now. You need to be flexible and you need to be agile. The things that you thought about that you were going to be able to do before going to distance learning, half of them may have worked. Some of them might have been too much organisation, too much activity. And not only that, the entire world has to shift quickly to what this COVID-19 has been doing. It's a regional thing, it's a world thing, it's different schools and different areas and different educational boards are doing it differently. You know, for instance, we are, and I will talk a little bit more about this shortly, we are actually starting to plan for re-entry into school. Again, the choice of words, re-entry into school, not reopening, but re-entry into school. So, you know, even to the point of where this slide presentation hasn't worked out how I wanted to manage it, being agile enough and being flexible enough to have plan Bs and adapt to the situation is crucially important. So being flexible, being agile, make sure you're, you know, doing those things and reinforcing that with teachers and reinforcing it with the admin, but also reinforcing it with the community. All right, if we can move on again, please, Mr. Alex. All right, so basically I see the continuum, and our school has seen the continuum as three phases. Pre-distance learning, where we got set up prior to leaving, prior to going to distance learning platforms, establishing what we think is going to work from the outset. Then into that distance learning phase. Now, we are only in 4 weeks. We are only 4 weeks into distance learning. Our school, Kyoto International School, goes on to spring break next week, which is pretty appropriate right now. The community's tired, the teachers are tired, the students are tired. So having that little hiatus for a week next week is going to be well enjoyed by everybody, even though nobody can go anywhere. We're kind of in lockdown, but if you had to be in lockdown, Kyoto at Sakura time in the spring is a pretty cool and great place to be locked down. Normally there'd be about 2 million visitors visit over the next couple of weeks, and literally there is just only locals here. So we're then into distance learning. So that was the phase we're in right now, and for the last week, at least the last week, we have been planning re-entry into school. Now, this is something that you need to think about as a school, as a teacher. What does that look like for you? The situation has changed. The landscape is different to when before you left. Students are used to a different level of learning. They've got to reacquaint themselves with the routine of day-to-day coming to school at the appropriate time, or alternatively coming to school outside of peak hours. But I'll talk a little bit more about re-entry further on into the presentation. All right, thank you, Mr. Alex. Okay, I cannot stress enough the importance of communication. All right, I send out a distance learning update every afternoon. Now, that update might be a news item that's connected to Prime Minister Abe's announcements. It might be something coming out of the Japanese Ministry of Education. It might be, as this week is all about, it's Online Literacy Week, and we have a challenge day, a virtual challenge day going live on Friday. So I send out an email via our internal system to all students and all families and parents every afternoon. Now, you may or may not do that regularly, but that is a very crucial piece. And as a school teacher, as a classroom teacher, it's important that you communicate more. We've offered our parents this week what we call Home Connect, as last week would have been our student-led conferences. Again, that can't have happened. So we just offered the parents the opportunity to discuss and reach out to the teachers and do a one-on-one, whether it be old school by a telephone or via a Zoom or a Skype, and give an update. And it's not focused on the distance learning phase. It's focused on all the work that has happened in term 2. Again, reiterating that school, the pathway this calendar year is still continuing on. It's just got a little bit different shape at the moment. You'll see in that on that slide in the far right-hand corner, distance learning survey. So I send out a survey to the parent body every week. How are you going? What do you need? What's good? What's bad? What's not working? And I think the parents appreciate it. I was speaking to one teacher today and saying, oh, the numbers are dwindling on the distance survey learning. And she said, well, that's probably a good thing, because that means they must be happy. They must be satisfied with what's happening. The other things you can see in there, we actually created our own distance learning sub-page on our web page. It's not visible to the public, but it's visible to our student body and teachers and parents, to centralise where people go to access everything that they need. All right, so some of the feedback early on in our distance learning survey was too many platforms. Didn't know my child's got 10 tabs open, et cetera, et cetera. So we rolled out the distance learning at Kyoto International, and so there's a centralised web page, and it has the planning for the entire week with dynamic links. So once again, just making sure that your parent, your community is well up to date. And particularly in a country like Japan, where 70% of the information comes out in Japanese, I can actually get English language updates to the community, as well as Japanese updates, where they may not have been able to access or they don't know the sources to where to go to. Make sure your parent body knows that in your communication, who are helping the school make their decisions. Is it the board? Is it your networks? Okay, are you taking information from the government, the Board of Education, etc., etc.? Reinforcing that this is not a solitary decision being made by one person. All right, so it's a collective decision. Always at the forefront is, how does this affect student learning? All right, so you're probably not overly happy about the fact that is he going to get to some websites and all that. This is, I suppose, my perspective is more about the holistic approach to distance learning at the moment and the important overarching aspects. All right, Mr. Alex, if you push on, please. All right, and this is not everything, but I put 3 groups of ideas that came into my head that have become evident, and it's a green light for fantastic, amber light for, okay, this is something to be worried about. Red light is these things really do flag with you and you have to respond and act with them quickly. So one of the greatest things that I've observed, and it's been reinforced with the staff, is the increased level of collegiality amongst the staff. They've actually, you've got, I can already see head nodding, and I've got early learning teachers working with grade 6 teachers as they develop resources. Maintaining authenticity as well. So we'll do a lot of read alouds, set up green screens in classes and do read alouds of books. And then have a cool, I saw one the other day, something about a bear, and there was the deputy head of school in front of a green screen reading this book. And then I saw the final video, and he was actually, his head was, he was sort of had this massive bear behind him, and he's reading this book about a bear, and it was going to go out to EL3. You know, so making sure your students don't take the easy option of just getting stuff off YouTube. Authenticity in your resources is really key. Making sure that the teachers that the kids are familiar with, that the students are familiar with, are still the faces they're hearing and seeing. All right. Differentiation has improved. Innovation and creativity. You know, I'm seeing wonderful aspects. Yeah, the fact that we've got a virtual literacy week. So the librarian at 12 o'clock every day this week goes online to Zoom. Anyone can sign in and listen to her reading out a book. Gee, we use Seesaw to, you know, it's tell us about your favourite book. I think today's one is the Mystery Reader Challenge, and all the teachers held up a book per se, such as, you know, hold up something like this and say, okay, there's my book. Who am I? And here's a little bit of a description. And so the students are going to respond to that activity virtually again via Seesaw. So they're all the good things. The things to watch out for: stress in parents, stress in teachers, and stress in students. All right. Now, this is uncharted water for your parents. They're not educators. They are not of the lucky profession like you people are. All right. They need to be brought along. They need to be told it's cool to be flexible. It's cool to change things up. You know, ask questions, work with the child. All right. So stress, and teachers as well. We, rightly or wrongly, have a check-in every Monday morning. All staff come in for a brief period of time outside of peak hours, and I just get a temperature check about how people are going. And then we do that again on the Friday briefly. It sort of contravenes social distancing laws and all that, but we're in a part of Kyoto where people can, you know, avoid public transport, and it's also important just for people to socially see each other. but also how you're going. Now, don't underestimate the amount of time all this takes. You know, you as a teacher, you're online, you're developing stuff. It does get better. And the ed tech, which is another green light, the ed tech capacity of people across the education world that are involved in this right now has just gone exponentially through the roof. Be careful of screen time. If you go back and when I share the video, share this presentation with you, you'll see a lot of photos of students that are outside doing activities. Okay, they've taken a photo, but we're mindful of trying to keep them off screen time too much, although it's kind of a necessary evil. Again, that social emotional disconnect, making sure that you're flagging that and you're aware. Unfortunately, we don't have a counsellor here at KIS, but if I had a counsellor, I would have somebody available to students and parents regularly for check-in sessions. And then that last one, that re-entry into school. So the red lights, and I'm going to come back to the re-entry into school in the next slide. All right, the red lights are travel lockdowns. Staff going on holidays that are coming from countries that must be self-quarantined. We need to make sure people flagging that. That's for the community as well. We've got spring break coming up, you know, so parents need to know if you can get off the island of Japan and you go to a country it has lockdown laws, you'll be in 2 weeks quarantine, self-quarantine. Your child can't come to school. You can't come to school. All right. So those are all the things. Preparing for a positive testing in your school. I don't know too many schools that have had positive testing students or teachers at the moment, but you need to be prepared. Cancelling events, changing the nature of events. And again, budgeting. We are reviewing our budget even as I speak, and it'll be dependent on the sort of numbers that come back. All right, Mr. Alex, next one, please. All right, resources. Again, this is going to be not what you're looking for, but I think it's a good one to remind yourself. Your best resource is your network. All right, reach out to those people. I could give you 1,000 different online resources right now, but they'd be just on top of the other 1,000 different online resources you've already got from other people or from Twitter and et cetera, or online or through your email. Your best resource is your network. And when things got, I'm very lucky here, the Japanese Council of International Schools is about a 32, 33 strong network of schools. We meet twice a week, your choice of twice a week, Zoom onlines. We're in a constant, WhatsApp group that's bringing to note all important changes and information. That has been, and I feel very privileged to be a part of this network that's made navigating these waters a little bit easier. I went back to my old roots as an old tech director and got it back onto tech director and got a lot of support from the guys there. So get your tech guys onto that website, talk.techdirector.org. Another really good example of supportive networks. I made myself available into another couple of networks, and these are just 2 examples I've thrown out. The Association of Advanced and International Education. I hadn't previously done a real lot with them, but I was aware of them, and now I've become doing a lot more and reaching out and looking at their resources. And also the Academy for International School Heads. All right, don't be overawed by the term. Again, a lot of people in there that are looking to work with work with individuals, work with schools. The other thing with resources at the moment, leverage online premium resources. People like Zoom, people like BrainPop, people like there's 1,000 others that are offering free access to their premium quality resource at the moment. So anything you've got now, go and do some research and find out, are they happy for you to take on the premium resources during this COVID-19 time? The one resource I am going to head you towards, which I found really quite uplifting, was a Facebook one that came across my feed. It's called Educator Temporary School Closure. And there is a lot of really good resources and a lot of good chat and good talk. And you start to realise, guess what? There's everybody else is having exactly the same experience as me. All right. So you sometimes might feel a little bit isolated, you know, and you take Facebook at its face value. There is the good and the bad, but for 90% of it is really good, and I've enjoyed keeping up to date with what's happening in countries around the world by that Facebook site. All right, please, Mr. Alex, next slide. I know that I've been sort of going on for a while. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. That's actually the last slide I have for you.
Okay, all right. Oh, it was, because I was going to come back to, thank you. I was going to come back to that re-entry into school piece. Now, if people are interested, I will share this is a collective document that the JACAS schools here we've started developing in alignment with the Japanese government, the Ministry of Education. You need to start thinking about bringing your students back into school and what that looks like for your community. For instance, you know, we won't be having mass assemblies. All right? We will close the school at the end of each school day and not have after school activities for at least a month. All right? Some schools are changing their opening and closing times so that students don't have to travel on public transport during peak hour. Social distancing. Where do you eat your food? In your cafeterias. All right, we will be moving our lunch times wherever possible to outside, to non-hard surfaces where students can just sit, so that the potential to spread the virus around is minimised. Again, scheduling. What is it going to? You're going to launch straight back in, or you're going to bring in one grade level? You know, what is it like? And I haven't even begun to talk about early learning and the implications for that. So look, there's the 50-cent tour of Kyoto International's distance learning. Anybody that wants to reach out to me, please do. I'm more than happy to chat and talk about these things. And all I can say is wash your hands, stay safe, keep a social distance. Cheers.
All right, thank you for that, Michael. That was really excellent. Lots of good content in that. I'm going to hold questions until we get to the end so that we can move smoothly into the next presenter. I do also see a lot of excellent participation in the group chat, both with attendees who are sharing good resources with each other, and also speakers joining in and sharing with that. So Michael, if you want to stay around and you can share and contribute in that as well, you're very welcome to. And I'm going to be collecting resources as well as the video for this to share out to everyone on the attendee list afterwards. So I can collect any resources that speakers want to share, and I will send those out to people. Okay. Our next speaker is actually someone who I've known for quite a while. Got to know, let me just skip to share that screen with you. So our next speaker is Sean McDermott. I got to know Sean several years ago, actually at a Singularity University Summit in New Zealand, and discovered that we both had a lot of very forward-thinking ideas about education. He's a really bright school administrator, school leader, and I'm delighted that he's able to share what they have been doing in Hong Kong with his school there. So I'm going to put you on mute from here, Michael, and I'm going to invite Sean to come and speak. So just a moment.
Great, thanks, Alex. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yep.
Okay, we're good. Alex, okay, that's fine. I can't see myself on screen, so I have no idea what I look like. I'm going to speak quickly, echoing a lot of what Michael said, and thank you for that, Michael. I really enjoyed hearing about your perspective. And I'd also like to echo what Michael said in thanking Alex for organizing this and for all of you for joining us today. Let me see here. Okay. Okay, so very quickly, context. We're a international secondary school in Hong Kong. I think we're in week 8 of our online learning. We got the word that we were closing during the Chinese New Year holiday, so the last few days of Chinese New Year were rather frantic for us, but we were up and rolling and delivering our program on Monday after Chinese New Year. And as Michael said, we've been running a full program, so learning continues, very much so. But it's been quite a journey so far, and hopefully there are some takeaways that will work. So the way that I'm presenting this is, I'm going to talk about some of the things, I mean, there's a lot here, but some of the things that I think have worked for us, some of the things that you definitely want to consider that have come up for us as a secondary school. I'm going to briefly touch on technology, but as Michael said, there's a million and one things out there that people are using, and I think they all have worth. And then I'm always reluctant to give advice, but there are some things that are possibly worth thinking about. So I'll finish with those. Things that have really enabled the online learning for us is we have a student and learning management system called Gibbon. It's been developed in-house, and as Michael said, it's one place that the students can go to find everything they need. So there's not a dozen different places that students go. They go to this place, they see their timetable, they see their schedule, the links are all there, everything's ready to roll. There's one place, one starting point for them. So you could have a few different resources for delivering learning, but if they're starting from one place, that makes a big difference to the kids. We're very fortunate in having a very strong school culture. I think what we've found is that this has been a real magnifier in terms of the things that are working well in our community, and some of the things that also we need to work on. And so we're extremely fortunate to have a very sort of student-oriented, focused and solution-oriented staff who are quite sort of technologically proficient. So so people moved quickly, and we're very fortunate about that. I think clear and consistent communication, single point of communication. You don't want the head of school saying one thing and then 30 minutes later an email goes home from a head of year saying something slightly different. Communicate, the flow of information has been extremely well managed here in the school, starting with our head of school, Toby Newton, and that's been a real pleasure to observe. The way we've managed our communication has been very reasoned, very evidence-based. It aligns with government announcements, real clarity, transparency. I think that's been extremely important, and I think that's helped build trust within the community during this time, which again, we can set up and run the best learning programs that we can, but if we don't have trust and we don't have a sense of community, it's extremely difficult for effective learning to take place, as we all know, right? And what we've found is that starting with strong routines, that sort of continuing from school, were really important. So signing into tutor groups in the morning, having a chat, how's it going, right? Let's move on to period 1, learning continues. This is what we did before Chinese New Year. We're online now, but this is after. So we started with very strong routines. And for our senior students, our exam classes, the year 10s to 13s, that's continued throughout until now, which I think is week 8 or 9, week 8. And they've continued their routines. What we found was, what we found was after about 4 weeks of sort of traditionally structured learning and timetables and things like this, that we found that our year 7 to 9 students, so our younger secondary students, were sort of ready to pop. It became quite stressful. Families were starting to, kids were starting to sort of tune out a little bit. It was hard for them to maintain focus. It was hard to maintain sort of an academically oriented approach to learning, which we never really emphasized from the start anyway, but everyone wanted to do the right thing and definitely sort of provide the view that learning continues. As Michael said, we've been surveying very frequently throughout, so we were able to identify that this was starting to become a challenge, and so we sort of shifted phases in learning. So what we've done is the 10s to 13s have continued, but what we've done is the 7s to 9s have moved to sort of a few hours of sort of structured type learning in the morning. So there's a check-in, and then we have some physical movement where we dress up and we're like 80s fitness instructors, getting people moving and having a bit of fun and telling a few silly jokes and just checking in with the kids and seeing how they're getting on. And then we're moving to sort of a reinforcement sort of literacy, numeracy, and languages type program that runs for a couple of hours in 40-minute sessions. And then we're moving to a self-directed learning model in the afternoon, where we have a whole pile of units that are pre-prepared by teachers that are interesting and fun. So it's everything stop motion animation to, you know, baking bread to, you know, to do everything that you can think of. You know, to building robots and just all sorts of things. And we've found that that program evolution has really, really helped keep our 7s to 9s engaged. Now, the first 4 weeks, so we had our more structured program. The last 4 weeks, well, and until the holidays that are coming up at the beginning of April, we will continue with this phase 2. And this program is evolving. We're moving into phase 3. For after the break, we were planning for a phased-in return from the 20th of April. We found out a few days ago that distance learning is going to continue past the 20th. We don't know when we're going to return. So we're moving into phase 3 with always that eye on the return to school, as Michael said, which is so important. So we're sort of we're working through these phases with this endpoint always in sight, which is that there's going to be a need to be a phased return back into school and all the considerations that come with that. So we never take our eye off that. Another consideration is that I saw in some of the comments earlier that there is definitely an increased teacher workload delivering learning online, especially with the secondary, the conversations about pieces of writing and things like that that happened sort of in the moment in classrooms. It's much more difficult to have those online. So what we're finding is that with our senior students, especially, we're delivering and we're chatting, and then later comes the reading and the feedback and things like that. So we're finding a big increase, and teachers are doing this at home alone, as you know. So there's this real sense of isolation. So again, as Michael said, you know, we're really checking in with teachers all the time. The senior leadership team, each of us has people, chat groups and things that, you know, we keep things nice and light. And you know, there have been some individual instances come up where people have needed extra support, where staff have needed support, and that's fine. We can always have a conversation and figure that out to make sure that people are supported and our community remains strong. So that's extremely important. Financial support for families, you know, that is a consideration. So, and some families have contacted us right at the start. We messaged our families and we said, let us know if you know, if you need support on the financial side, and we can certainly help with that. So what we're doing is our board chair contacted all of our community and we're redeploying. We had some scholarship funds sitting there for certain types of scholarships. We are going to redeploy to support our families. And we think, you know, we're well positioned. The finance committee of the board met early. This is the other thing we've had excellent support from our board right at the start of this thing. The finance committee met, the board met, and we all agreed on what this was going to look like. So that's been super important as well. Learning outside your teaching, your teaching staff, you've got your support staff, your learning support assistants, your counselors, things like this. Definitely, we've been very careful to communicate the message that these our support staff are essential to the ecosystem of our school. So there's not going to be any talk of, well, now the students aren't in school, you know, do we still need to pay for LSAs and things like this? Yes, we do. And yes, they're absolutely important. And yes, they are contributing enormously to supporting students at home. We're finding that LSAs have been essential in supporting a lot of our more reluctant learners, those that are a challenge to get online for some of our students. Now that we're in week 8, you know, it's just frequent chats during the day for our English second language students in English. For some of them that are finding online learning a real challenge, that's where they are. Our LSAs are taking on a lot of that, and that's okay, and it's great. So that's been really important. We've also discovered the limits of technology. You know, we got very clever at one stage there where we had multiple hosts in various Zoom rooms that kids were rotating through. Michael's nodding, but we found that we kept signing each other out, and there was this big disaster, and there was, you know, it was just a couple of days, half a day of sort of scrambling to fix that. This has been helped by, we've had an online Zoom support room open, like a help desk, staffed by a member of SLT. So we started with teachers in one and SLT in another, and parents and students could go to them and say, look, I need help with this and that. Can you help me? And we would help them. The teachers one was for your sort of day-to-day questions, and if some difficult questions and challenging questions came through, then they could forward to SLT. We found that this lasted about a week. The teachers help desk, because we're obviously watching workload has been super important. We don't want to overwhelm teachers at all. So that's dropped away, and now it's just SLT manning the help desk. And we had a few inquiries in the early days, but now we have it open all the time, and we sort of rotate in and out during the day, but it's working extremely well. And it's a real support to our community. So the help desk has been super important on Zoom. There's been, you know, we've had some announcements this week. So there's been quite a bit of uncertainty these past few weeks when it comes to exams, what's happening with, you know, IB exams. So now we know that, and GCSE, so we're an IGCSE school. Now we know that those exams are not taking place, but we don't know now we don't know what it's going to look like. And so there's some uncertainty in the community and so managing uncertainty and complexity, and, you know, communicating through uncertainty and complexity, and those considerations have been so important. So they've been, as I'm sure, you know, again, Michael, I hope I'm not, but I just, you know, referring to you know, just basically what Michael said, you know. But basically, lots of discussions, lots of talking through scenarios, lots of thinking about the ifs, and lots of care when it comes to communication. I can't emphasize that enough. I'm just conscious of time, so I'll spin through this very quickly, and there's a lot more that I could share. Pastoral support for students has been extremely important. Just checking in with kids, noticing who's not there, not following up, you know, your child is absent, what's going on, get them into classes, absolutely not. Check-ins, how's it going? Hey, we noticed that, you know, Johnny's not been with us for a little while. Is everything okay? Is there anything we can do? Light touch, and having heads of year, having teachers check in. You know, needs-based, you know, whoever you think is the best person to check in with that family, that person checks in. So that's been really important. Definitely phasing in the learning. In the early days, I mean, there's, as Michael said, there's tech companies offering free, you know, extended and pro versions for free now, which is great. We paid for, like, for example, Zoom, we set up business accounts right at the start because we quickly found the limits of the free version. And having that in place right at the start was really important. It costs, but definitely worth doing because you'll save yourself so much heartache later. Maintaining financial reserves, not only now, but 6 months from now when we're on the back end of this thing. So schools are coming under a lot of pressure to perhaps cut fees, reduce fees, offer discounts, all these sorts of things. And we understand where that comes from parents who are concerned about their financial situations, but we also need to be able to run a school 6 months from now on the back end of this. So financial viability is extremely important. So, you know, we're watching that very closely. I've mentioned surveys, I've mentioned frequent staff check-ins, and I think one thing that we found really useful is physical movement. Just keeping the kids moving, and it doesn't need to be like a hardcore daily exercise program, just movement and valuing well-being, and saying and saying to families, especially the 7s to 9s, if the classes aren't working on this day, then that's okay. Take a break, do some baking together, take a walk, maintaining social distancing, whatever works, to maintain well-being, because I think that comes first. I could go on, but I don't want to overstay my welcome.
That was excellent, Shahan. Great, thank you very much. There's a lot of very practical, insights in there that I think should be very helpful to people who are just getting into this, just starting to face it, and are going to face those sorts of practical problems on the way. So fantastic. Thank you for sharing that and preparing that. Again, just like Michael, please stick around and contribute in the chat as we go along, and I'll be saving questions for the end. Okay, so I'll mute you for now, and we'll move on to the next speaker, who I'll just quickly introduce. So our next speaker is Zoe Ye. Zoe is actually a former colleague of mine. She's currently the deputy head of primary at Wellington College in Hangzhou. So we've had a speaker from Japan, a speaker from Hong Kong, and now a speaker from mainland China. Zoe, I've always known as someone who will tell you very straight exactly what the truth is, and is also someone who cares tremendously about kids in education and does everything possible for families and children in education. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing what Zoe is going to tell us about. So Zoe, I've unmuted you.
Okay, thank you, Alex. So
and I'll put your slides up.
Okay, so I don't need to, do you want me to manage it or you do it for me?
I think we'll just stick with me managing it. That seemed to be
Yeah,
the best way of making it work.
All right, thank you.
And if you want to turn on your video, you're able to do that.
Okay. All right, hello everyone. My name is Zoe. So I work with Wellington College in Hangzhou now. I wanted to speak to you today about my experiences dealing with the changes that we had to do since China has been dealing with the online e-learning initiative. These are just my personal thoughts and opinions. Hopefully you can learn something from what we have tested, and we can all grow together as an international community. The first thing that I want to talk about is what factors I think are the most important to focus on in this environment we face today. The key words, I would say, preparation. Our school started e-learning on the 3rd of February. We got emails from parents in the first 2 days. They expressed their frustration, confusion, and difficulties. Like for some students, the only device available was a cell phone if they happened to be stuck in the countryside for Chinese New Year. And some websites teachers, especially foreign teachers, gave them wouldn't open or need a VPN. That was extremely impossible for them if they're in the countryside. And they don't have a printer at home, or children spend too long time on electronic devices. Everything was spontaneous and overwhelming for Chinese parents. I'm a parent, so I was the same with them. So fortunately, these don't need to be problems for schools which just closed or are about to close. I also hope that parents can be reminded by us. Yeah, so could you turn to the next 2 slides? I already. Parents can be reminded by us that they can not just be a reminder at home, they can be a role model. So for example, they can learn with them, read with them, communicate with them about this situation, so the children can be confident and positive about the future. That's about families. I would suggest. Next, let's come to the administration. So during our first week, we had a lot of different learning experiences, because this was so new for us too. There was no example to follow, and the only thing we could do was to collect the feedback from parents and teachers and make a workable plan. So we held like a long meeting, tons of meetings in that 2 days to discuss possible problems and the solutions. And then we finally made policies. We had to consider government requirements and everyone's well-being, including staff and students. So we tried to follow our normal timetable, like what Sean said. We wanted them to have art, music, PE as normal. So we followed our timetable, want to make them feel or believe it is school life, still school life, but it just happens at home. And we really be grateful to our IT team. So they offered training to our teachers. They made menus for teachers and the students in a short time. Then we decided to, before that we decided to choose Microsoft Teams as our platform, because most of our daily work is already based on it. We set accounts for lower grade students, and also give more pressure to the parents, because we started the IT lessons from grade 3. So for lower grade students, the parents have to do everything for them. Then we send them the menus and their accounts. So, but I feel that's not the hardest part. I feel our teachers should be extremely overwhelmed in that first week. You cannot imagine how much they had to do. So besides the teaching, they had to collect the travel information of students every day, to report, maybe twice a day, to report to the bureau. And they had to prepare themselves to be a better streamer. Because for me, I'm shy. That's why I didn't want to turn on my camera at the beginning. So for teachers, I think it's the same from them. They're confident in classrooms, but in front of a camera with so many parents watching, that's a lot of pressure on them. So also, a lot of them were traveling. So the difficulties parents had were also with them. But anyway, we faced the issues. However, we gradually refined our process. Like what Sean said, the starting was good, because the first week was almost a disaster, I have to be honest. But the second week we have our routine. So now it's just like a normal life. So I feel just like our learning process, we started from missteps or mistakes. Let's go to the next one. So I feel that one of the biggest challenges is the fact that home-based learning environment is not under our direct control. So I would give the following suggestions to teachers. So half of our time or lessons was recorded video lessons, then half time was online. Because I feel we want to limit the time when they spent online. So this way their health can be better. So firstly, I would say have clear goals for each lesson. Not just for teachers themselves, also make the goals clear to students, so deep learning can happen. And the goals, I feel you need to they have to be accessible and achievable. Also, we have to stick to the goals. Maybe we only mentioned it once or twice in the lesson, but now I feel I would recommend we mentioned it a lot, even throughout the lessons, because we need the information, or we want to check if the goals are achieved by the students. So later on, we can close the loop of learning. And secondly, with less interaction and group work in online classes, lesson design costs more time. That's why all agree teachers have put extra efforts in each lesson for planning and grading, such as things like this. So for better differentiation, we spent more time for that. Also, I would say tasks we give better relate to real life. I read a sample online. A teacher used like a TV show to give them a case. So some people have a big dinner. Who will be the first to be infected if one of them have that virus, and so use the situation. Put the information to what we're learning. I feel that's interesting, and if the tasks are relate to real life, they will be more welcome. And also, the reason we use halftime for recorded lessons, because this will allow students to learn at their own pace. And then we will have a following lesson online that will help teachers answer their questions and also give them chances for interaction. For diagnosis, I feel now we only can do it during that online lesson, and also when you mark the homework. So because it's important, you need to know how the students have learned what you want them to learn, and also it helps teachers check if the students have achieved all the goals. And so we mostly use T-chat or emails. Lower grade students, also parents do this for them. So this way we can collect the feedback and also give individual help or tutoring if needed as a follow-up. So above all, having a strong relationship between school, parents, and students was always important, but now it's even more important, because if we don't have these strong links, the environment will fail and the students will suffer. Okay, let's go to the next one. So I have spoken about some of the things that we faced in our learning environment. I want to shift over to some of my reflections on how things might change in the future. Even though China is returning to a classroom environment as our quarantine is, as soon as it's lifted. So here are some of my thoughts. Let's go to the next slide. I don't know how many of you have read or heard about the book. In 1994, this doesn't give away my age. I read it later on. It swept the world. It centered around how to learn, which is more important than what to learn. We all agree with it. It told us that everyone should find a suitable way for themselves to learn efficiently and to enjoy the process and the results of learning. The subheading is interesting. It says, this is your 21st century passport. We are in 21st century now, but where are we in this revolution? I really hope this academic situation can be a good opportunity for everyone to reflect on the new learning revolution. So I asked some questions here. I hope we can all think about it, and I just share my personal opinions. So let's go to the next one for the first question. So should we control learning or inspire learning? So for me, like now with the compressed teaching time and distance, the real learning experience of every child has been revealed to us and to parents. So what we have seen or what we think might not be true. And like now we cannot adjust our teaching based on the reaction we can see in the classroom. So that's why I mentioned before, a more sophisticated design is needed. We do need to put more efforts in lesson design. And also future learning, I feel, should be more participatory and voluntary. Because like things like now, if we teach online, they learn online, there's no way to control. We don't have that much control now. Okay, so next question. How can we help learning happen? We need to reevaluate our role as teachers. We know if we teach, students will learn, but that doesn't mean if we teach, they will learn. They can gain knowledge not because we teach it to them, but because they are willing to learn. If they are not, however hard we try, there's nothing happening. Also, as teachers or educators, I feel in the future, we should be designers. I read it from a book. I think it's a founder of a famous Chinese bookstore. Not Chinese, Japanese. He said in the future, all the enterprises should be like a design. That's the most important, like a soul of all the companies. I feel for all the schools, design is also that important. So we should be designers for learning instead of teaching, because we should help them learn better, not teach better. How well we teach doesn't affect how well they learn. And although I think only when a student looks into themselves and is motivated to learn, can we bring the best out of them. All right, next question. I have so many questions because I have been thinking during this period. I have more time. So how should we run our school after school reopens? I believe not just me who is thinking about this, many things should change. We can see, or it's visible, that there are gaps between students and the schools. And during this period, we have set a framework for future schools. So I hope we can combine what we've done well with what we are doing well now for future. And also more, I hope, that's what Alex said, I'm an honest person. So I hope more actual cooperation in international education should be above other interests. So like we can see public schools, they can share like a high quality resources among the province level or even nationwide. But for international schools, I know we have different curriculums or different design of curriculums, but we have a lot to share too, but we didn't see that happening a lot. So I feel students' interest should come before commercial interest. All right, as a final thought, let's go to the final. I know they have shared a lot of good resources, but I would to share some resources I found useful to teachers. So I hope that could help. Alex, I'm almost done here. Sorry, I cannot control it. Yeah, so these are the resources I would recommend. All right, that was all from me. Thank you for your time.
Okay, that was fantastic, Zoe. I really appreciate both the expertise that you bring and the empathy that you bring for families and empathy for your teachers that you're working with as well. And some really thoughtful questions there, I thought. So really appreciate that. Again, please stick around and participate in the chat. I'm also delighted to hear that you're still into design thinking and education. That's something that we had worked on together before.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to mute you here now, Zoe, and we will move on to our next speaker. Great. So our next speaker is Ian, who is both the IB director for Yushen Education Group, and he's the Western principal of Shanghai Liaoyan Bilingual School. So Ian, I don't believe I'm not sure if we've met in person before, but I've certainly known of you and known of Shanghai Liaoyan School. We were both part of the Shanghai United kind of network before, and I've heard great things about you from everyone through that. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say. I'm sure it's going to be great quality. So I'll unmute you here, and I'll bring up your slides for you if that's how you'd like to work it.
Good luck there, Alex. I thought, well, since all the teachers have actually been upskilling themselves recently with Zoom, with different platforms, etc., I would actually try and do it myself. So yesterday, I was frantically making a video, a PPT with videos embedded in it, which was wonderful because it added great stress to my life. So now I know exactly how all the teachers on here are actually feeling. Now, I have taken this PPT from a different angle, if you like. Now, from what Michael, Sean and Zoe have said, which has all been wonderful and extremely relevant, very much from an admin point of view. Now, I've been very hands-on with the teachers on this because it's been very much a collaborative IB approach to how we have done this within the school. So what I really want to show you today is not how we started, but what we actually do, okay, to make it more engaging and more relevant. Now, as an IB school, authorized IB school also, one of the big things that we wanted to do, and I see in the group chat that Jess from Shanghai United International School also wrote, was about student agency and student voice. Zoe, you mentioned that in your presentation. And, that is one of the big things that we've also included within the school. Now, for people here who are from China, we've been running online learning for weeks. It has been stressful to the max. We've had teachers crying, and I think this is where one of the big things is make sure you look after your community. You look after your teachers, you look after the students, you look after the parents. And also as admin, you look after yourself. Because, a lot of the time as an admin group, we forget to actually look after our own well-being as well. So that is very, very important. Now, when we started originally, we didn't jump in. We planned which platforms we were actually going to use. And for the primary school, we decided on 2 platforms, CC Talk and Zoom, which would be the main teaching model, which would then be enhanced with other more pastoral, like Class Dojo, which could be used for positive management, and Zoom also for additional slots where the teachers would just make themselves free for a chat, which I know other schools are doing with what they're doing. Okay, next slide, please, Alex. Okay, so very, very clear. The 3 points we're going to look at is CC Talk, which is a wonderful bilingual platform, which you can get in Chinese and English, but can actually also be changed to other languages as well. So it can actually be used globally around the world. And how we've actually used that to actually enhance the teaching and learning within the school. Zoom, now we've used Zoom in a very different way. So we've used that to actually promote student agency, student empowerment. Now for UPYP people here online, that will be voice, choice and ownership for the new enhanced PYP. And, actually having kids control their own learning or be in charge of their own learning is really significant. So we have actually had like student council, or we've had the house captains, or other grades actually every week or twice a week actually present to the whole school, which has been a wonderful thing to actually keep kids engaged, but also have them empowered as well. And then finally, some of the challenges I think that we've all had. Now, of course, Alex used to work in Shanghai United, Jess, who's on here as well. So I still meet a lot of the principals from Shanghai. We have another IB school next door, World Foreign Language School. And so we've been meeting up quite a lot online to talk about the challenges that we've actually faced within the school. So as I said, when we started up, we picked the 2 platforms that we were actually going to use after all the leadership team came back from their holidays early. So I arrived back in Shanghai on the 2nd of February, which was probably good because Scotland was shut down on the 3rd. So I just managed to get back to Shanghai in time, which gave us time before the teachers came back to pick those platforms. We also gave the teachers time to actually, we trained them up on that as well, because we learned it first. We trained the teachers. So again, it was very much that collaborative approach to what we were actually doing. And then the teachers trained the kids. Now, of course, one of the issues which Sean also mentioned was the timetable. We started again the Mamalai slowly approach to the timetable. So in the first week, we did 2 hours a day. In the second week, we did 3 hours. And now we're on full timetable. And we've been running full timetable for quite a long time. So in the next slide, Alex, you will see 2 examples of the timetable. Okay, so within the timetable here, we have actually not changed our timetable at all. It's exactly as it is in school. But what you'll see, the one on the left there, there's certain times for pastoral care, for student well-being, where the teacher's online, when they're actually free, you know, just have a chat. So the kids don't have to be there. It's optional to really check on the well-being of the kids. The other one on the right is grade 5. And you'll see that they're using Zoom a lot more than the other grades. The reason behind that is, of course, the IBPYP exhibition is coming up. The schools are trying to figure out how to actually plan that online. So we're using the Zoom chat groups to actually get groups together to actually get which issue they're going to look at. But also what they can do in grade 5, it's more empowerment to the kids. So, you know, we're setting up sessions for UOI, Unit of Inquiry, where the kids are running the lessons. And for English, where the kids are running the lessons to the grade 1s or grade 2s. So it's really trying to get the whole school community to work together. Now, on the next slide is a video, okay? And it's actually a grade 2 teacher who was actually teaching in Australia when she filmed this. Now she's back. What I will say is the annotation that you see on here, now this is CC Talk, okay? The annotation is done by the teacher, because what you don't see is the kids typing in. They can type in their answers here, or they can actually also put their hand up, raise their hand, and the teacher will unmute their microphone, and then they'll give the answer. So let's watch the video. Well, Alex, you haven't hit the sound button. So Alex, when you, I knew this was a challenge. It took me an hour yesterday to figure out how to do it. Alex, at the top of the screen, you'll have the dots go down.
Yeah, you win. Hello, my name is Sade, and I'm a grade 2 homeroom teacher at the Yaoyuan Bilingual School, and this is my online learning classroom, so welcome. This is the program we have been using called CC Talk, where we have been doing all our live interactive classes. So
we knew we were going to have some technical difficulties in there. That's okay, because what we can actually do is...
So I teach Unit of Inquiry as well as English because of their bilingual school. So this is where the students can talk, ask questions, watch videos and other materials that I provide them with. They can also use this chat to ask me questions, share their homework as the student has done here. I can provide them with feedback, and they can also put their hand up and talk to ask questions to me and the other students. So today I would like to take you to some of my classes so you can see how it all works with the online learning and what we're doing up. Hello, good morning still to our CV class. Today for our 11th class we are going to be doing UOI, and last week we learned a lot about Earth. So we're going to do a quick recap quiz. Hopefully it'll be a bit of fun. And then we'll get stuck into our new learning for this week. So you can either call out the answer or type it in the line, in the chat. Okay. Shape of the Earth. True or false? The Earth is flat. That is correct. It is B. It is false. The Earth is actually what shape? You can call out the answer. Good. Yeah. Who can pronounce this word? It's actually one of our spelling words. Can you read that first, Kevin? What is the shape of the Earth actually called? Sphere. Awesome. Fantastic. Okay. How many seasons are? Pop your hand up. Well. Ooh, people coming in hot with the number 4. Alan. Spring. Summer. Perfect. Boom. Alright. Name one of the layers of the Earth. So there are a number of layers in the Earth. You just have to try and name one. Oh, there are, and you can type in how many layers there are as well, right? I'll go to Shiny. What's one of the layers? Crust. Nice. Alan, give me another one. Mantle. Good. Fantastic. Kevin, give me another one. Unicorn. Oh, you guys are good. Alright, Alan, give me another one. So these are the 5. So we've got how we went. So these are all the possible answers. So you were correct if you did 5. Again, big class, amazing effort. Now you are ready to learn about the sleeping kids' mind.
Okay, so that was actually an example of a class from grade 2. They're young kids, yeah? And you can see how engaged they actually were as well. Now, for me, there are 2 big things that actually happened there. One was the preparation that the teachers did, which was incredible, you know, and I know that, you know, online teaching is making teachers cry, because it's actually a lot more work than actually doing it collaboratively or doing it in the classroom. So that's one of the big stresses, but also the passion of the teacher as well. You know, teaching is like being on stage, and it's no different being on camera. And you have to remember that, you know, one thing you miss is that emotion that you get from the kids within the classroom, but you can still get that if you actually infuse them online also. Now, with the next video, all we're going to do is just show you a bit of it. So Alex, we're not going to watch the whole thing, but just to show you how we use students about, oh, not the same video, about how we do student agency, kids. So please, Alex.
Okay, hello Green Team. How are you? Okay, I'm here to talk about homework. 47 years ago, I had a dream. I had a dream that the ballot was stronger than the bullet, the pen mightier than the sword. And I've been to the mountaintop. I can prove you this. Do not think what your school can do for you. Think what you can do for your school. That relates to the topic we're going to talk about today, homework. Okay, why do we have to talk about homework? Because actually homework isn't what you think it is. Homework is actually very important, and it plays an important role in life. Why? You might ask this. Yeah, I'm prepared too because I know the answer exactly to your problem. It's a review. It's a review for what you learned today. After a day of busy school, then you go home where you don't practice anything, and as all children want to do, play. Homework shows that you did some study at home, you reviewed what you learned today, and you're ready to proceed to learn new things tomorrow. Okay, hello.
Now, he does it in Chinese afterwards as well. So it's really impressive because it's bilingual. And it totally shows student empowerment and student agency. Now, with that, the brief that I gave to the house captains, he's one of the green team house captains, was that you just need to make a speech. It can be about anything that you want. So he decided to do it on homework. And, you know, he got no help from the classroom teacher, no help from anyone else. That video has not been edited at all. You know, and the wonderful thing, that's been shown to the whole school and also shared through our WeChat account as well. So it's the great thing about getting the kids involved within the school as well. Also the administration. So, for example, last week, one of the grade 5s were doing the weekly boring spelling test. And I turned up in the class and I challenged the teacher to a spelling test as well. And it was just fun, you know, because the kids need to see that everybody is involved within the school community. It's not just the teachers, you know, so principals should be in there also. So the last one I'm going to show you, video, before I go into a bit more of what we're doing in the school, is a very short, because we're going to cut it short, Zoom video, okay? And again, this is a grade 5 class. And what you'll see is it's very loud, it's very interactive. Now, this is how the teacher normally teaches within his class. So it's actually quite impressive how he's managed to transfer that relationship to online also. Okay, Alex. Still smiling.
Right, what was the next word?
Thought.
How do we spell thought?
T-H-O-U-G-H-T.
Yeah. Thought is the past, present, or future tense of what?
Think.
Yeah.
Think. Past tense of think.
Past tense of thing. Yeah. So what is our silent letter in thought?
G.
Just
G.
G?
G-H.
G-H.
Yeah.
Thought.
G-H.
T-H-O-U-T. Thought. Yeah, it would be G-H. Right, what's our next word?
Doubt.
I doubt that. I really surely it's not.
D-O-U-B-T.
Yeah.
D-O-U-B-T.
D-O-U-B-T.
Yeah.
What's our silent letter in that?
B. I lost my B.
It's the B. Yeah.
Next, the last word is cough. C-O-U-G-H-T.
G-H. Cough.
Yes.
Oh, Tina's go. Oh my goodness.
Of course, I got the 9. Yeah.
Right. Okay, guys. So, I would like to have a thumbs up if you got more than 6 correct.
Of
Thumbs up
course.
and keep your thumb up. Don't take it away. Keep your thumb up if you got more than 6 correct.
I'll
More
keep
than
it.
6.
Okay.
Cool. Well
We
done.
need to point it at all.
All right.
Yeah. Keep
Awesome. So, if you got less than 6 correct, practice your words tonight because we're going to do them again tomorrow.
Correct.
So that was a very, very loud class. Many admin on here would probably go, good God. But, you know, what I love about that is, and Zoe, of course, we're both in China. You know, we've been doing online learning for weeks now. So to actually, you know, still have that momentum and actually have the kids actually, you know, being so upbeat and positive is actually a great, great thing. Now, I've also seen other classes by this teacher where he actually still mutes the microphone and lets the kids put their hand up. So it depends on the lesson. It depends what you want from the lesson as well. Now, you'll see that by using these different platforms as well, it's giving teachers and students choice. So it's allowing them to actually control their own learning and the kids to control their own learning as well. So that's been a very big thing. Now, to the difficulties. One of the difficulties, oh dear, one of the difficulties, of course, that we have had is it's very time consuming. So the teachers have found it extremely difficult to plan, you know, for a full day. Yes, we're still in collaboration online. Yes, we're trying to limit screen time, but it is difficult because we're a private school. Most of your private schools on here, you know, parents are asking for refunds. They're not going to get it because actually, in fact, teachers are putting more work into this than they actually are into the normal day-to-day teaching. It's a totally different thing. I think as one of the benefits of the online teaching is that teachers are upskilling themselves. They're learning new skills which are transferable back into the classroom once they go back into the classroom, hopefully soon. For those schools who haven't started online learning, make sure you have a clear plan. Make sure you know the direction that you're going to take this with the teachers also. Make sure that you have student agency. Make sure you have the pastoral care and well-being there also. That would be my advice. The pictures that you see on the screen here are, you know, 2 Zoom pictures on the left there. You'll see the one on the bottom is with me in it for the spelling test, which was great fun. I asked the grade 5 teacher to spell onomatopoeia, and he failed miserably on that one, which was great. And the other 2 on the right show you an example of the CC talk, you know, which can be, as Jess put in the chat box, done in Chinese and in English. So that is everything from me. Mine shows a practical side to what's actually happening within schools or what you can use. I know that many schools are using different platforms. I know there was a big worry for us in China when we all started at the same time that all the platforms would collapse and the internet would collapse as well. So I think this is why, you know, everyone had a backup as well. So thank you again for listening to me today. And I know that the next speaker, I come from Scotland, the next speaker comes also from that part of the world, who's Irish, who's Brian from Xi'an, who's also a dear friend of mine. I think everyone, all the speakers are actually related somehow in this group. So thank you again, guys. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, Ian. And yes, I think the connections are a pretty good example of what Michael mentioned earlier about use your network, reach out to your network. Your network is a great resource in getting through the challenge. I really enjoyed those videos you shared. It was nice to be able to actually see what it looks like in practice, and that was fantastic. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And you've already done the introduction for our next speaker. So you saved me on that as well. But I will just briefly put up Brian's intro as the primary principal of Xi'an Langjiatam International School. So great to have another speaker from mainland China who's going to share his experience coming from a primary school background. And I'm sure it's going to be a great talk. So I'll start up your audio now, and I'll put you on mute, Ian. Thank you. I'm afraid I'm just having some connection issues, it seems. I don't know if you can still hear me. Are you there, Brian? All right, not sure if you're able to hear me or not. I can't hear you, Brian. Okay, thank you, Jess, for letting me know you can hear me. Brian, I'm still unable to hear you. All right, I'll see what we can do here. I've tried unmuting you again. But I'm still unable to hear you, I'm afraid. Well, this is the nature of going online, right? We have to expect that sometimes there are going to be these problems. What I could suggest, if we're not able to get your audio working, Brian, is that perhaps, oh, I heard you for a second. Are you still there, Brian? Okay, what we might be able to do if we can't get your audio working, there could be a possible workaround we could try. If you give me a call on WeChat, and I can see if I can get that audio to be shared.
Okay, Alan's calling you now on WeChat. Is that working?
All right, I can certainly hear you very clearly. Is anyone else able to hear Brian?
Okay, so yeah, people can hear me on Zoom, so it seems like we're good to go.
All right, so we got it. Great.
Okay, all right, I'll start my presentation. So just say thank you to Alex for organizing, and thank you to everybody else as well for taking part. Okay, please go ahead to my next slide, Alex. Okay, please go ahead to my next slide, Alex. So I'd like to cover 5 points today. I see people saying there's an echo. That's because we're on WeChat as well. So I don't know if you want to try turning off the WeChat. I'll leave it up to yourself, Alex. Try turning off the WeChat.
Sure.
Okay, so the 5 points are whether to go with synchronous or asynchronous learning, to have clear guidelines, that language is very important, social emotional support for both teachers and students is very important, and then I'll share some sources. Please go ahead to the next slide, Alex. Thank you. Please go ahead to the next slide, Alex. Thank you. Okay. So the first point here is whether to go with synchronous or asynchronous learning. So synchronous or asynchronous. So some people lost me, so we'll go back to the WeChat. Forgive me. Some people lost me, so we'll go back to the WeChat. Forgive me. Some people lost me, so we'll go back to the WeChat. Forgive me. Some people lost me, so we'll go back to the. So we need to consider synchronous or asynchronous learning. Synchronous or asynchronous learning. Synchronous learning is things like Zoom calls or live videos. So if we go down this road, it means a lot of work for teachers, and it means that they're going to have to be online, connecting with their students face to face. And if we go the other way with asynchronous learning, then teachers will be creating lessons or recording lessons, and it won't be done in real time. So I think that this is a very, very important point to consider for schools going forward. Next slide, please, Alex. 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 Next slide, please, Alex.
Okay, we seem to be having quite a lot of difficulty getting the audio to work on this, Brian. I really do want to be able to share what you've prepared and all the work you put into this and the insights you have to share. So one of the suggestions that has been put forward is maybe we could record this at a separate time, and I could add it into the videos that are shared out to everybody. That way everyone could have a full and clear and complete sense. Okay, so you are happy to do that? Yeah, so you and I kind of on a back channel, we can arrange a time that works for you, and we'll record that separately, and I'll include it in what gets shared with everybody from this session. So it's a shame that we can't get it right now, but I do really appreciate you putting the time in and the preparation, and we will get what I know are going to be some very useful and good quality insights to share with everyone. Okay, so that would be the end then of all of our prepared presentations. I want to take a chance again to say thank you so much to all of our speakers. And for those who have time and are able to stick around right now, if we want to take just a few minutes for fielding any questions. If you have a question for a particular speaker, you could please enter that into the chat window. Although Sean McDermott has had to leave as he has some other obligations in his school, anyone who is still remaining will be able to discuss those questions for a few minutes. So if you have a question, please type it into the chat window. Okay, so I don't see any questions yet coming in. Physical outdoor activities. How have you tried to lead this through online learning platforms? That's an excellent question. So thank you, Vince. Yes, Michael,
Right.
go ahead.
Can you hear me? Everyone good?
Yes.
Okay, good question, and it's something I neglected to mention. This Friday, we've taken the school offline of the timetable, and we're running Challenge Day. So we're going to live stream via YouTube onto our distance education, distance learning website at 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock. And we've just sent out to all the students 2, 3 and 4 point challenges for them to undertake, after which they take a photo or a video of the evidence of them performing the activity, and then they share it into a folder on their Seesaw account, and that then goes into, we have 4 houses there, and so they put the evidence of their completing the challenge with a byline, a caption saying, 2 point challenge, said good morning in 5 different languages. All right, so someone records them doing that, 2 point challenge, uploads it. So, and we're trying to sort of, it's twofold. The concept of this is, one is to give the teachers a little bit of time away from doing lessons, etc. Give the parents time away from pumping out the routine of schedules, and also to throw a bit of fun into it. So this is, we would have normally been having our Olympics Day this Friday. So instead, the community is going to look at my buffet and my deputy going live, and then students can accumulate house points throughout the course of the day. I'll tell you how, ask me again on Friday about 4 o'clock and I'll tell you how it went.
All right, that's great. Thank you, Michael. Another question that came in, which is quite an interesting one, is about how to work with the very young children who don't have access to all of these gadgets. And what recommendations you might have for that, or if you've been able to solve that problem. So I don't know if either you, Michael, or Ian feels up for sharing on this.
I'll jump in on this one again, because this is like one of my major bugbears. The answer is, there is no good answer. I wish there was. I'm attending a webinar tonight. Some of you might know Nikki Foote, and I think it's out of one of those associations, the Association of International Educators. There's a webinar tonight specifically about early learning, and they are the biggest challenge, without doubt. And this is consistent across every international school that I've spoken to about this. I've got teachers putting up fantastic stuff, seesaws, and the parents, for the most part, are doing their bit, but it's a challenge. Sorry, that's as good as I can give you.
All right, Ian, I see that you've got your hand up. You want to speak to this as well? I'm just trying to unmute you right now.
Yep. There we go. Michael, I totally agree with you. I think, having watched some of my kindergarten teachers teaching, now we know that the Chinese government has said, okay, no teaching to kindergarten, but of course we're a private school. We can. And I watched it. I watched every teacher teaching, and I was just like, oh my dear God, God bless you. Because it is so difficult to engage children of the age of 3 to 5, in the day-to-day process of the teaching, even if the parent's there. So after a few days, 2 days, I stopped it completely for the kindergarten, because it just wasn't effective, really. What we did instead, rather than live classes, was we pre-recorded. And, that's where you could actually focus on the phonics, focus on different activities that the kids would follow. And what we asked was that the parents would video some of the kids' responses and share back. And that was actually a great way to show development within the early years, within the kindergarten. rather than these poor teachers trying to teach kids, crawling over sofas, wetting themselves and all this. No. So that's what I would say.
Okay, great. Zoe, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
No.
All right. I did see in the chats, Liz mentioned something called Nearpad as a good resource for working with the kindergarten kids. So perhaps that could be something to be explored and added to the list of resources we'll share out of this. One other question I wanted to pose to you that came out of the chat was a question about how to get the parents on board with all of this process and how that worked for you. So who would be happy to field that question?
Well, I'll answer that because Michael talks too much. It's my good friends in Tokyo. There we go. No, I think, Michael, you kind of touched on that before anyway, and it's with the communication that you need to maintain with the parents. It's that open communication, that we have constantly with the parents. So, for example, we're in China, so we don't use WhatsApp because we can't. So we use WeChat, and we have WeChat groups for every class at the moment, temporarily, with all the parents, okay? I'm in every class group, okay? So I will respond directly as the principal to the parents, but also we have a whole school chat group with the parents also. We'll have official WeChat accounts where the parents can actually get information on the school, which we post every day. So there's a different post every day from the school, which keeps parents up to date with what's actually happening in the school, but also government notifications, because there's been so much fake reporting, shall we say, about when schools are going to open. We still don't know. We also did a lot of training with parents, so we actually arranged webinars like this with the parents, to get them on board. Our break coordinators for PYP and for MYP and for DP are spending a lot of time with parents before a unit. In addition, we're sending home a weekly planner as well, so the parents know what's going to be covered during the week, and they can actually support that learning at home as well.
Okay, yeah, I think onto that, just piggybacking on that, Alex, and letting those parents know that there's flexibility in how they deliver. Some parents want the structure and the rigor of the normal school day. Some parents want to say, look, can I pick and choose? And we've let them know repeatedly, as long as they get the tasks that were identified for that day completed, do what works for your family, do what works for your circumstance, and just keep trying to reinforce that we're teachers, we've been in the game for a little while, we know, this is how we structure our days, but other things will work for you in your family circumstance. So keep reinforcing that with the parent and the parent community, and always remember Abraham Lincoln's, you can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time.
It's definitely, being clear, in each one of your presentations, the communication is at the heart of making this work. I noticed Jess in the chat has pointed out she feels it's the not knowing is what the parents are struggling with the most. And certainly the communication from the school has to be a part of addressing that. I know Sean, before he had to go in his talk, talked about managing uncertainty is a big part of going through this process, and it sounds like that is being echoed in what you're saying now. I want to be respectful of all of your time for having been here, but if I could maybe just take two last questions from the chat. One question, we'll do this one first, was how do you deal with students, or I guess it could also be parents as well, depending upon age groups, that are just not responsive to emails? They're not responsive to any of the attempts on the part of teachers or the school to keep them engaged in the learning process. This is open to any of you to answer.
Yeah, look, I was actually doing a little bit of that whilst we were chatting. I make sure I follow up. The teachers have to follow up with an email to the home, and then I get the bursar, the registrar, to ring the home. So, you know, we want people to still recognise, but the important thing is sort of give it 1 or 2 days, and if you're seeing that there's nothing there, then definitely drop the email home to the parents and the student saying, just concerned, we've got deadlines coming up, etc., and then have one of the office staff follow up with a phone call, just to say, look, checking in to make sure everything's okay.
Great. Zoe, you've been very quiet as a panelist, but so I'm going to push you a little bit. But I know in your talk, you also talked about the challenge of getting the parents and needing to push the parents a little bit. So maybe you'd be able to speak to that question as well.
Yeah, so for the first month, we asked the teachers to contact them more, but we gave e-assessment the first week of March. Then I used this opportunity to contact, actually not many. So out of more than 600 students, we only have 15 or 17. I had to call the parents to give them some pressure. But after calling them, I felt it wasn't their fault because they are coming back to work now. They had to take their kid to the office for lessons. So we ask a teacher to record each lesson and the online Q&A session so they can do it whenever they have time to do it.
Okay, great. So then one last question that I'll pose from the chat before we wrap up is, and this would go to all of you as well, is how are you as leaders and administrators in your school actually managing the stress of this, managing the whole process for yourselves? And then I'll just tack on a little bit to that question to ask, you know, looking at the end of getting to a point where students are returning to school, do you look at that with a sense of relief, maybe an attempt to return to normalcy, or do you feel that you're getting things out of this process that you're going to keep with you as you go forward?
Lots of exercise. I do lots of exercise. I make sure I separate a time every day because you're at it pretty full on. Like it's normally full on, but this is, you know, the next level. Yeah, I think that we won't. There's been so much collateral benefits that have come out of this that would be, you know, we'd be silly not to continue to leverage these things. The increased capacity of staff with their educational technology, the increased, and as Ian said before, one of the key aspects of any IB education is student agency. The independence and the agency that students have been able to display can be further leveraged, you know. So yeah, I don't see this as, is it the optimal situation? No. Are we looking forward to getting back to face-to-face? Yes. But there are definitely lots of positives that have come out of this scenario.
Fantastic. Ian or Zoe?
Yeah, I really look forward to go back to campus. Because, for example, we do have a couple of students who doesn't behave well, but there's no way to give them detention or talk to them. So I feel face-to-face talk will help more.
Okay, great. And Ian, you'll get the last word on this. Having a lot of difficulty hearing you, Ian. I think maybe we have a connection problem. I'm not sure. We may have lost Ian. So maybe Zoe, it's you that had the last word.
My honor.
Okay, so again, I do want to respect all of your time, and so as it looks like maybe we're not able to get Ian to get his last word in there, I'll take this chance to thank all of our. Oh, is he coming through? low bandwidth. Definitely not a good description of Ian. Okay, so I will take this chance to say thank you, Michael, thank you, Zoe, thank you, Ian, if you can hear me, and thank you to everyone who has come online with this and asked excellent questions and stuck around with this, because all of this is basically trying to improve our practice to help students, help children, and help families. And so the fact that everyone has been dedicated and sticking around for 2 hours on this talk is a great expression of that dedication. So thank you for this, and we'll sign off there. The next you will hear from this will be in an email, courses attached. Okay.
Well
So
done.
goodbye,
Thank you,
everybody.
Alex. Great job, mate. Great job.
Well done to all of you as well. Thank you very much. Okay, so good night, or have a good day, or depending on where you are in the world.